Okay, so we've talked a little bit about Sanskrit, the language, and Sanskrit mantra and the tradition, learning about the tradition, learning about the philosophical system that it comes out of. And Jamie, we can talk a little bit more about it, or I'll find you a video to explain a little bit we just talked about. I'm sorry, I forgot to press record. So here we are. We're just about to learn Ganesh mantra. And Ganesh is the aspect of the divine in the Hindu pantheon that is the elephant-headed god. So he has a man's body and an elephant's head. It's very strange. You think, what's, what is this got to do with anything? So the story goes that the aspect of the divine that is Shiva, that is the destroyer, is that aspect of the divine that destroys, again, old ways of being, that burns down a forest, that causes a tsunami, the plates of the earth shifts. They attribute all of that to Shiva. And they're his consort or his wife named Parvati. And Parvati is the daughter of Brahma, like the overarching aspect of the divine. And so Shiva's off doing, deity stuff like deities do in history. And he's gone for like millenniums and doing these things. And Parvati's left alone for this time. She's guards and all those sort of things, the story goes. And she has Shiva's child while he's gone. And this is, he returns and he comes to her bedchamber, and there's this grown man standing in her bedchamber, and he gets upset. And before he knows what he's doing, he lops off the head of this young man, and Parvati, as all mothers would, loses her mind and is screaming and yelling at him like, you've killed our son. And he's like, how am I supposed to? So they have the argument, and he says, it's okay, I'll fix this. And he says, like the first thing I'll go out and I'll bring back the first head that I can find and I'll fix this. So he goes out, and the first thing he encounters is an elephant. And then he brings back the head of the elephant and brings his son back to life with the head of the elephant. So this is how Ganesh gets the elephant head. And Ganesha, you'll hear him called Ganesha or Ganesh. The ending depends on the context and the tradition that you come from. You'll find in Sanskrit, there's usually A's. There's A's at the end of words. In Hindi, a lot of the A's are dropped. So sometimes you can see if someone is trained in a Hindu lineage, just a traditional Hindu lineage and language, or if they're trained in traditional Sanskrit, like pranayam or pranayama. In Kundalini Yoga, they'll often talk about pranayam, and in Sanskrit, we say pranayama, right? And so we have Ganesh with the elephant head. So sometime later in this story, there's many stories in between, but sometime later in this story, Shiva and Parvati decide to have a race around the universe to find out who will be acknowledged first amongst all of the divine beings in the universe. And Ganesh refuses to go because he doesn't want to leave his mother. And Shiva is like, man, you're my son, you gotta go. You know what, stop embarrassing us, get out there. Your brother's Skanda and, all your other brothers are out there, and you've got to race around the universe just like everybody else. And Ganesh is clinging to his mother's skirt, saying, I don't want to race around the universe. I don't want to be gone for millenniums. I just want to be here with my mother. And both his mother and father are cajoling him, trying to convince him that he should get involved in this race. And finally, he mounts a rat, which represents the ego, and he races around his mother and stops. And both parents are like rolling their eyes in their head and going, what are you doing? And he looks at them both and he says, I have been around the whole universe. My mother is the whole universe. And in the profound wisdom and putting the divine feminine above all else, he wins the right to be acknowledged first amongst all of the deities. And so the story goes that you'll often hear a simple Ganesh mantra chanted before all other mantras, because it removes the ego and puts your highest self first. It's about letting go of whatever it is that can stand in the way of you manifesting what it is that you desire. So if you want to do a healing mantra, you might chant the Ganesh mantra to remove all obstacles in the way of manifesting that healing intention. So traditionally, we often do mantras for other people. That doesn't mean you can't do them for yourself. If you're looking to overcome, bad habits, addictions, establish new practices, find ways that, all of the physical, mental, spiritual, and emotional healing, there's nothing wrong with it. But what I would caution with this mantra, is my experience has been, is that mantra is not a placebo. Mantra is a very specific technology of vibrating the voice, and it can be done mentally. So there struck or unstruck sound, so just the mental thought, is as powerful as the actual struck sound. Some would say even more powerful. But traditionally, when we're first learning mantra, we do them out loud because it's harder to concentrate and continue with the mantra mentally. So it requires the practice, like anything else, of doing it out loud, that eventually you can say it over and over and over in the mind. Classically, when we take on a vrat or a vow to do a mantra, we would take it on for 40 days and 40 nights is one powerful way of doing it. And you might do 108 in the morning and 108 in the evening. So we might set our intention first, think about our intention. So in today's experience, I'm going to guide us into a meditative state so that you can think about what your intention might be. As what is it that I want to remove obstacles to? And I would caution to be careful what you want to remove obstacles to, because sometimes it doesn't always come in the form that we expect. I give you one example. A friend of mine, John Tonin, and I were talking one time and he shared how he had set his intention to get caught up on his taxes. And within a few days of starting this, like a 40-day practice of this mantra, he got a letter that he was being audited and had to get caught up on his taxes immediately. So any intention that we set, we might also put the caution on that intention of in a way that I can manage, in a way that does no harm. So you may want to say that I know you might want to remove obstacles to your financial stability. Well, in a way that does no harm. You don't need grandma to die for you to inherit the money that you need for financial stability today, right? Like it's like in a way that does no harm to self or other or the planet, right? Any other being. Right? So thinking about what is it that I want to remove obstacles to? Maybe you know someone who needs physical, mental, spiritual, or emotional healing. And so we might even as write down on our paper, that person's name, what's happening with them. And now here's the thing about doing mantra for other people. Our mantras also have to acknowledge divine free will. So if I'm doing a mantra for another person, if I'm going to do a mantra for Shauna and her ability to concentrate to do her homework, right? I might do a mantra to remove all obstacles so Shauna can do her homework. But I want to do it in a way that has no harm, and a way that it respects her divine free will, right? So those are the kind of caveats we want to put out there into the world. So I don't want to manipulate you in any way or the person I'm doing the vow for. It's not up to me. If we have a friend that is got cancer and doesn't want to do the cancer treatment and says, it's my time to go and I'm okay with that. But our mantra might be, let nature take its course in a way that's the least painful and uncomfortable for my friend, right? Like, as opposed to begging for the universe to stop time so that they're not leaving, or to heal them. Maybe they're okay with going, and if we're asking for healing, it's prolonging their suffering, right? And they may be content to be done right here, right now. And we have, whether we agree with it or not, we have to respect the boundaries, right? So for me today, my daughter's dog requires, you'll find out this week, he's like, what the vet is preparing her for is that he has to go in for all day, every day, for 30 days, 5 days a week, to have radiation. And I'm brokenhearted about it because I don't agree that it's okay for the dog. And yet my daughter will not talk about not doing it. And it's $9,000. So if I'm this morning when I'm practicing with you, I will be seeing her and I will be seeing Rilo, and I will be asking for the resolution of this in a way that is in Rilo's highest good. Because I'm not sure that she knows what's in Rilo's highest good at this moment. And it's not my job to decide. And I might have the caveat in a way that is going to help Olivia to understand the nature of the universe, right? We can't necessarily stop time, right? So if it's in both of their good, the dog will sacrifice because the dog, well, is not given a choice, right? So we can't possibly know. So all of the things, everyone, we don't know who's going through something in a given day. And so we might even have a simple like intention with a mantra like this, that, may everyone in my family go to sleep tonight with peace. And, are so simple, right? And so during this, the meditative part of it will take a few minutes to center and get ready to do the mantra. And the mantra, so I'm going to type it into your chat box. It's a very simple one. It's Om Gam Gana Pata Ye Na Ma Ha. And I'll explain that. Om being the seed sound of the universe. Seed sounds. So there's a theory that Om, and remember, when I say there's a theory, it doesn't mean that anyone needs to believe it, but this is the theory I'm operating on in teaching you, which would be what my teachers have taught me. Om being the seed sound of the universe, Gam being the seed sound of Ganesha, and Ganapata is like saying, oh, Mr. Ganesha. It's like a high acknowledgement and calling on the name with reverence. Yeah, and my computer just correct it to yes as opposed to yay. It auto-corrected. Let me type it again. Yeah, it wants to correct that. And it wants to make Namaha, Yamaha. How exciting. Here we go. Om Gam Ganapata Ye Namaha. And now, so Ganapata Ye is like being in a park and it's going, yay, right? So it's opening up to big energies like Om, calling on the sound of the universe. Gam, the seed sound of Ganesh. Ganapata, yay. Namaha is a form of salutation. So it's saying Om and salutations to the highest form of Ganesha. And so these sounds are said to, we think about the palate of the mouth. And if you think, like, even just relax your jaw, relax the mouth, and think the sound Om. You feel what happens to the roof of your mouth. And just say a word like Mississippi in your mind and feel the roof of your mouth. So even unstruck sound is still touching on different parts of the brain. We have a tapping in the roof of the mouth that's happening, whether you're thinking the sounds or whether you're actually speaking the sounds, right? So when you say Om, you can really feel how the air aspirates across the roof of the mouth and exaggerates that. So it helps us to find the sounds easier so that when we think them, we do know what the roof of the mouth should feel like, right? And sorry. And so in chanting Om Gam Ganapataye Namaha, we're asking to call on the aspect of the divine that removes obstacles and takes the ego out of manifesting that which we desire. So it's like, move aside my ego, my selfish desires to be acknowledged first amongst all the gods or any other such craziness, and let the highest good of the universe, acknowledging the divine feminine, come first, right? So we're acknowledging the nature of the divine, the feminine and the masculine balance. We're acknowledging it with respect to free will, with respect to the health and wellness of any aspect of creation that we did the mantra for. Now, can mantras be manipulative? Absolutely. So it's one of the reasons why it was secret. Mankind has had to get to a level of education and acknowledgement of the different cultures of the world to a place where we would hope that people would use the mantras for good in the world, good in your own life, good in your families and your communities. And so these are all the theories behind why we learn it and how we use traditional Sanskrit mantras. So now 108, why 108? It's a classical number out of numerology. Believe it or not, we could probably spend 200 hours exploring the number 108. You'll find it comes up a lot, but it's such an important number that not only in the Eastern traditions of India, they use a mala is 108 beads. You have one counting bead and 107 beads. So for you to use a traditional mala for today's practice, classically it goes into the right hand, and we put the beads in the across the palm of the hand. I'm sorry, I don't have any with me. I was going to be home by now. And you would count. So if you have a mala and you like using it, you're welcome to. And you use the thumb and you go all the way around the mala. And when you get to the counting bead, you go back the other way. We don't actually cross the counting bead, right? So if you were going to start a new practice, so in your second 40-day practice, you will have learned 2 or 3 mantras, and you could choose one of them to add into your personal practice when you get to your second 40-day practice. And so you might use your mala to help you count, or if you don't have a mala, which tends to be, I keep giving mine away. It's usually what happens to me. I often give away my malas, and so I use my digits. So I use my right hand to count. Generally, I count 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15. And then I go 15, 1. And then 40, I do it again, it's 45. I do it again, it's 60. I do it again, it's 75. 90, 105, 6, 7, right? You'll see Thomas, when first workshop I did with him, this is how he taught me to count. Second workshop I did with him, he taught me to count this way. So 1, 2, 3, 4, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15. And then later, and another time he explained you can go 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15. So there's many different ways, different traditions use the hands in different ways for counting, but it's a really great, simple way to count and not have to, I don't have to remember where I am, because if I get to the last, as long as I do all the digits, whatever order we do all the digits, then I know I'm going to the next digit on here, right? Is how we count mantras when we don't have malas. And you always have these with you. So it's good to learn how to tap and count. You can also just use time. You can figure out approximately how much time it takes you to do 108, and then give yourself that much time. Maybe it takes 10 minutes. If it takes 10 minutes, and you can just set your alarm to buzz or flash at 10 minutes, and then, a nice little ding, and 10 minutes is up and you've done 10 minutes, which is approximately 108. I like numbers, so I often use a mala or my hands, and can do a half mala or a full mala. When you're using the hands and counting with your mala beads, so when you get to the bead that's halfway, you've got your counting bead here, and you're in the middle of your mala. So I've got a half mala, which is 54, which also happens to be the number of beads on a rosary. And the rosary comes from the East. We believe that during the Crusades, they would have been introduced to, and the Greeks and the Egyptians and all of Mesopotamia really would have used malas in it wasn't just the Eastern Indian traditions that used the mala for counting prayers or mantras and that sort of thing. It would be most world traditions that had a tradition of singing or chanting or repetitive prayers often used it for counting. And numerology has been important in history that we know of. Numbers have always been a relatively important aspect of spiritual discipline. And I think, what has that got to do with anything? And, is it agree or disagree with certain doctrines? That's for the individuals to decide. My job is to introduce you to the concept. And if it's a useful concept for you, just like anything else, you may take it into your personal practice and you may not. No one is requiring. Yoga doesn't require that we believe in the Hindu pantheon of gods. We're learning about a tradition that's closely connected to the yoga that we know as Westerners, which is the practice of asana, pranayama, mudra, and bandha. But it's another piece of the larger yoga technology that helps us to manifest and lead healthy, happy, holy lives. One last word before we actually learn something of practical this morning is to talk about time of day, before dawn, after sunset, are classical times to do mantra. It's also said to be more powerful if you do it in the same place, but do you have to do it in the same place? Absolutely not. So if you get up in the morning and you practice, and you go to bed in the evening, and before you go to bed in the evening you practice, it's great. There are powerful mantras like this. Some people will take them on and chant them all day, every day for 40 days. So it means you might do your classic practices first thing in the morning, before and last thing in the day. But throughout the day, you may let it go over and over and over in the mind as well. So I would say if that is a thing that you want to do, be careful of your intention, because it will manifest in some way, shape, form, or another. And I think that that's everything I need to say. We'll talk more about mantra and Sanskrit and when we get to practicing the alphabet and things like that. But every time we're together for an intensive, I really like to teach at least one, and so that you can experiment with it, play with it. And my belief is even if you don't take on a 40-day practice, if you try it, if you're interested and you want to feel it and get an understanding of it, doing it twice a day for 7 days even is a way to, it's kind of like a micro, it's like a homeopathic version. It's the small version of the same powerful mantra, right? And if you do that this weekend and in November, then by the time you're doing your second 40-day practice, you'll have a couple of mantras that you might choose from. And I would highly recommend choosing mantras that someone has given you, as opposed to when you just read in a book and decide to try and figure out what it sounds like. I'll be teaching you, and I'm only teaching you mantras that I've done at least a 40-day or longer practice of, and that have been taught to me by my teachers, as opposed to reading them in a book. Before I worked with Thomas Leslie Friend, a few teachers taught me to chant Om, a few Kundalini mantras, Satnam, Waheguru, Ik Onkar, Om Guru Namadev. Like these are classic Kundalini mantras that are in a colloquial Punjabi language. And there are Paramahansa Yogananda taught English mantras, the Self-Realization Fellowship. So there's some old songs that a lot of people know that don't even know that Paramahansa Yogananda wrote them. Maybe we'll try to do a couple of those as well. Or I have access to recordings of him teaching them, which is kind of fun to listen to as well. And there is in your course pack, under mantras, a little further down, you'll see there's a link to my teacher chanting this mantra you're going to learn this morning. So it's a place to go and listen, and it's a call and response recording. So he calls it, you respond just like we'll do today to learn it. So the tradition is originally would have been taught orally, without necessarily being able to see the words. You would be listening to the sounds and repeating the sounds. And this is a nice short one, so it's easier to do that. We get to Gayatri Mantra, it's a little harder to stay focused and remember all the sounds in a longer kind of freight train mantra like Gayatri Mantra. But the Ganesh Mantra is pretty short to be able to learn orally. But if you find it's hard to concentrate and you need to look at the words to remember how to say them, the first time you do it, that's perfectly okay. It takes time everyone's mind works differently. And if visual helps you, then you should use visual, right? Shruti is like the sound, like hearing the sounds and practicing the sounds. So when we start this, so I'm explaining everything so that when we go into meditation and we set our intentions and then we go into the mantra, I will say, we're going to do call and response. I'm going to call the seed sounds and you're going to call the seed sounds back to me. And while I found that I love hearing your voices, that over the internet, because of the lag, it often is distracting and hard to stay on track if we have our sound on. So I'm going to trust and I'm going to ask that I hear this unstruck sound so that I can hear it. And if you have any, hesitation or need more time to think about it, you can listen to it. You do not have to practice this at all. And my intention is to gift it to you the way that my teachers gifted it to me. And it's up to you and your free will to receive or to not receive. There's no judgment whatsoever. And it's just another technology for meditation and setting our intention. So Ganesh mantra, removing obstacles. And it'll sound like this eventually. Om Gam Ganapatiye Namaha. And so Namaha is the salutation When you have a group of people together that are 29 or younger, we should use Namaha. When we have a group of people and we don't know the ages of the group of people, we use Namaha. If we do know that everyone in the group is over the age of 29, we might chant Om Gam Ganapataye Svaha. Svaha is an ending that changes after your first Saturn return. So Saturn is in a very particular place in the sky when you're born, and Saturn comes around somewhere between 28 and 29 years. Saturn comes around to the same position in the sky. So this is your life lessons, is the theory in Eastern astrology. And some people will call it Vedic astrology. That's another 45-minute discussion another time. But for now, we'll call it, Eastern astrology. And so for our intents and purposes for teaching it today, I'll teach you Namaha. And if you're past 29, right, and you want to take it on personally, you might switch it to Svaha. There's never any, the theory is there's no damage to do it with Namaha, especially if the person you're doing it for might be under the age of 29. And if you do it with Svaha, it's just more specific to, it's like fine tuning the mantra for someone who's past that first Saturn return. It's going into their second or even their third. Someone soon to go into their third Saturn return. Actually, I'm there. I have to be aware. Anyway, that's another story too. I'll try not to make another aside. So let's find our way into a comfortable seated position on the floor or in a chair. Both feet are on the ground. The spine is tall and straight. And I'm going to drink a little water before we get started. If you're seated on the ground, you want to be seated tall and shoulders relaxing back and down. Tuck the chin in just slightly. So have the most natural alignment of the spine possible. Arms are in a relaxed position. They can be in Gayan or Chin Mudra. And we bring the fingertips together. And again, if you're wanting to do this with an inward focus for self, you might have the thumb covering the tip of the nail. And if you want to keep an outward focus, more of a focus to either the divine connection or moving this mantra outward, we might have the hands in this mudra. As you learn more about mudras and you know what your intention is and the specific indications from a mudra, you might hold a different gesture, right? There's so many different gestures, right? But for today's purposes of connecting with our highest teacher and learning it, we'll have the thumb and the finger touching each other. It's an external focus, right? So sitting with the hands in a comfortable position. And of course, if at any point that's difficult on your neck and shoulders and you need some different kind of support, change it up. Make it as comfortable as it can be. All right, allowing the eyes to close softly and the attention to turn inward. Inhaling and exhaling through the nose unless otherwise directed. And of course, unless your sinuses are blocked this morning. As you find yourself settling into your seated posture and becoming aware of the present and the sensations in the body and the mind. And keep the face soft and relaxed, the jaw relaxed, the back of the throat soft. And even as we sit up tall, the belly is soft and relaxed. Allowing the breath to move effortlessly in the belly, hips are relaxed, and feet are on the ground or the knees are falling open effortlessly from the hip joint, getting whatever support that you need so that you can stay focused on this moment right here, right now. And as we allow our body to land here and our attention to turn to this moment, Yeah, we feel the breath settling. With each breath, let's allow the breath to become a little bit deeper, a little bit fuller, until you find your complete yoga breath. Inhaling completely, exhaling completely. Inhaling completely, exhaling completely. For now, let's let the tongue be away from the roof of the mouth. A hint of a smile releases the soft palate on the roof of the mouth. Noticing the sensations of breath coming in, the sensations of breath going out. Continue to focus on the breath. We'll begin to become aware of the space between the exhalation and the next arising inhalation, watching the gap. As we begin to watch the gap, noticing how the gap naturally expands and deepens. One or two more rounds of complete breath in, complete breath out, watching the gap. As the breath returns to its natural rhythm, from this place of stillness that we've created, take a moment to think about what it is that you would like to manifest. What would we like to remove obstacles to? What desire is it that we have that we would like support in its manifestation? It can be for self or other, can be for human or animal, for any of the two-leggeds, the four-leggeds, the birds of the sky, the fish of the sea, all matter of earth and sky and universe. What is it that you want to remove obstacles to? Taking a few moments just to contemplate. Maybe it's more than one thing. Can be multiple things. Maybe they're interconnected in some way. You may have a simple mantra, a simple intention like wanting to be more focused in my personal practice, but maybe more family oriented, like supporting Rilo at this time. It can be community or global. Let all those suffering, I want to remove obstacles to all those who are suffering in my community in a way that does no harm. To be more global, seeing flowers in the barrels of guns at war borders where there is conflict in this planet might simply be the word peace, removing obstacles to peace on this planet in a way that does no harm to any being. So contemplating from the microcosmic to the macrocosmic and feeling and sensing where you're drawn today. And again, it's okay if it's more than one thing. Now, if you feel like it serves you to write it down, you could take a moment and write it down, or you can just stay with your attention inward and keep repeating that intention and visualizing the manifest form of that intention. What does that look like? Getting up and practicing yoga at the same time every day. It looks like a peaceful resolution of cancer in a dog's body. It looks like everyone in your community going to sleep in a clean bed with enough food in their belly each day. It looks like flowers in a gun barrel. It can be a visual image if you're more of a visual person. So it may be words, thoughts, images. Keep it in the mind's eye for the next few breaths. Excuse me. And bring the essence of that intention to the mind's eye and repeating after me as I call the seed sounds. We'll do call and response a few times and we'll put a few sounds together and we'll put more sounds together and eventually we'll put the whole mantra together and chant it and then it will speed up a little bit. Repeating after me. Om, Om, Gam, Gam, Gana, Gana, Pata, Hata, yea, yea. Na, ma, na, ma, ha, ha. Gum, gum. Gana, gana. Pata, pata. Yea, yea. Nama, nama. Ha, ha. Om, om. Gum, gum. Gana, gana. Pata, pata. Yea, yea. Nama, nama. Ha, ha. Om gum, om gum. Ganapata, ganapata. Yea, yea. Nama, ha, nama, ha. Om gum, om gum. Ganapata, ganapata. Yea, yea. Nama, ha, nama, ha. Om gum, om gum. Ganapata, ganapata. Yea, yea. Namaha, namaha. Om gum ganapata. Om gum ganapata. Yea, namaha. Yea, namaha. Om gum ganapata. Om gum ganapata. Yea, namaha. Yea, namaha. Om gum ganapata. Om gum ganapata. Yea, namaha. Yea, namaha. Om gum ganapatiye namaha. Together. Om gum ganapatiye namaha. 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 Om Gam Ganapatye 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 Namaha. Noticing any sensations in the body. Maybe you can feel your lips, or maybe an awareness of the part of the brain that's stimulated, just as observation of self, sensation, noticing what's arising, if anything. And we'll open our eyes downward and bring our hands together and then to the heart. And I feel like let's take a deep breath together and chanting Om to complete this practice. Om. Shanti. So it'd be good to write down the intention that you set for your practice today in your notes, and so that if you decide that that's what you would like to focus on in a longer commitment, then you can continue to practice with that. And they say if you're going to practice in one place every day, to have that piece of paper with the intention written on it and leave it in that place, so that again the vibration of it is being imbued into the paper, and those are the theories around it. Whether and often doing the more we learn about psychology of the mind, we understand that anything that taps into a different part of the mind can help us to, I think of it as an ancient technology of help us to get out of our own way and manifest what it is that's our heart desire at any given time. And so I hope that it's useful to you, if not, or interesting, so that you know a little bit more about it and why people would do that particular mantra practice. All right. So culturally, you might hear in India, or even people who are from different parts of India, you may hear them say, Om Shri Ganesha, Swaha, Swarha, like lots of different ways. And when we do Gayatri mantra together, you'll hear me say Om, Om and salutations to Ganesha. So it might be Om Shri. Shri is another way of saying like sir or hey mister, not really differential title. Om Shri Ganesha Rayehi Namaha for a large group. And then we launch into Gayatri mantra, Om Bhur, Om Bhurvaha, Om Svaha, Om Maha, right? So it's like first, so before this, in the history of India, theoretically, they acknowledged Agni. Agni is fire. We learned about the fire of digestion, tapas and Agni in the Ashtanga. We read a little bit about tapas in harnessing the fire, that internal Agni or fire. And fire was very important. If you look at, like prehistoric history, like one of the big periods in time is when humans stand up and walk and learn to use fire to cook, right? Like it's one of the evolutionary periods of time. So fire was very important in Eastern culture, and they carried around what you would call an abhishekam. And in the abhishekam, and that's like kind of a gourd type of a container, could be made of clay, which would have only come along after being able to fire clay, right? You would carry embers from your fire so that you could start the next fire. So they said that the fire had no beginning and no end, that they carried the fire around, and it was a very important job to tend the fire. And so the fire would happen first before any other mantras, and the prayers would go up in the smoke from the fire. And that they believed that there was this idea that putting, saying their prayers with the fire, put their prayers, and gave them specifically to all the other aspects of the divine. And then a point in the evolution of it becomes about removing obstacles to manifesting that which you desire through the Ganesh becomes acknowledged first instead of Agni. So a lot of very old mantras you might hear as an acknowledgement of Agni or fire, and then the mantra. So in the Vedas, the Rig Veda specifically, you might see this acknowledgement of fire first, and then later in history, you start to see Ganesh being acknowledged first in those same kinds of mantras. And at the time that this mantra starts to show up, it would have been a time in like Vedic, pre-Vedic, Vedic, and post-Vedic culture where it became the most important things became our health, our wealth, and our sons. Yes, ladies, sons got prayed for far more than daughters at a time in history. And so if you had many sons, they could protect your daughters. If you had many sons, they could work your land. If you had many sons, it meant more wealth, was the theory back in the day. So oftentimes, removing obstacles to health, removing obstacles to wealth, and removing obstacles to having sons, caring for sons, and the health and wealth of your sons. Right. So that doesn't mean we can't pray for our daughters and or shouldn't, or ourselves as women, or our mothers, or our aunties, or the women in our community. And I would ask that whatever is in your prayers, if you decide to use this mantra, maybe you would also lay down a wish for the Indigenous women in our communities right now to remove obstacles to the limitations that the past has put on them and their families, and that they manifest the healthiest, wealthiest, most fertile lives that you can. And fertility meaning whatever that means for the individual today.